Hey everyone, welcome to my studio. I left off on this big mosaic last week, just having finished the centers, and I'm ready to begin working on the petals. So the first thing before I begin cutting anything is I need to look back at my reference photo. I have hanging directly in front of my workspace the reference photo that I used to trace onto the substrate. So I've got that, but what I want to look at is the colors. So I'm going to go to my laptop for that. All right, here it is. And I'm just going to focus on one flower at a time. So first, this top one. Now, it's really wonderful, the blue and the yellow there. But I want to point out that the yellow highlights are sort of in the middle of the flower, on the edge closest to the middle here, and then back around to the middle. And then this area is quite orange. So I'll be using more orange glass right in there especially. And on the tips, I have some yellow highlights, but I've also got some brown bits where it's shadowed. Most of this, however, is pretty orange and yellowy. This one that's in the background I do have in my composition. And look how much more dim that flower is because it's further back, it's in the shadow. And then this, I think I have removed it. And I'm not sure if I have this nice stem right here, but I want to make sure I've got that nice stem coming up. All right, so back to this one. I do have a stem, but I kind of like how it was curved in the other one. So I'm going to curve this a little bit or that way. And then I don't really have any stem going off to this one, so I'm going to add a stem going that way. There we go. Silly me, I'm starting this mosaic, and really the brightest yellow I have is just this one piece, which I don't know if that's enough to do this whole mosaic. I also have this bright yellow, but it's very, very lemony, and it's not as streaky as I'd like. The other yellows I have are much more pale, and I have this one, which is quite bright, but it's also very translucent. So I'm gonna see, I have quite a bit of this, so I'm gonna see if I can paint one side of it to make it more opaque and easier to use. I know if I put it down on this gray background, it gets a little bit more dull. If I put it on the white background, that's better, but I don't want to paint this whole background. I just traced over it. So instead, I'm going to try painting the glass. And the glass has one side that's more flat and one side that's a little bit textured. So I'm going to paint the textured side, I believe, and see how it works. Now, I have more of that glass, so if it's not a success, then no big loss. It's just a test. I'm just using Rust-Oleum paint and primer and white. That looks good. The can says that it dries to the touch in 20 minutes, but I like to set my timer for 30 just to be on the safe side. Alexa, set paint timer for 30 minutes.
Paint timer, 30 minutes, starting now.
All right, so the first step when I'm starting the new project will be to cut this down. And so dip that in some oil. I have some oil and cotton in a container, and I use it at the beginning of every project and sometimes in the middle if there's a lot of use for my scoring tool. I'm gonna cut some kind of wide strips. And I have labeled with a Y, sort of that middle yellow, which is this brightest color, so that I can keep track. And I also have my reference right in front of me that I can look at where I want it to go. And these shapes, I'm gonna try to go along with the veining on the petals, which would be like this. But I'm not gonna overthink it. I'm just going to cut some feather cuts or petal shapes to start with. And I wanna have an inventory that I can work with. A variety of shapes. So. Before I begin, I just want to examine the piece briefly, and if there's anything I don't like this shard sticking out, I'll just nip that off. When I'm cutting a lot, I use my Brita nippers so my hand doesn't get worn out. But when it comes to actually working on the mosaic, I prefer my Lebanons. Because I've gotten used to them, I think that it's easier to see what I'm doing with the Lebanons. So here's one that's really sharp. I don't want anything like that on this piece. Looks pretty good. I'm using Weldbond, and I just put it in this Wilton Icing container that I got from Wal-mart in the cake decorating area. I like to keep my Weldbond in these containers. I like it better than brushing it on, and the containers it comes in tend to get clogged. This can get clogged, but I just pop it off and clean it pretty easily, the tip of it.
Paint timer is done.
Alexa, stop. Here it is. I had to weigh it down with a rock because the wind kept blowing it around. So it's dry to the touch right now. It says dry to handle in 1 hour, and then it says fully dry in 24 hours. So I think before I cut it and mess with it, I'll let it dry for 24 hours. It looks really good. You can't see my hand behind it like you could before. I think I can use it. The color's nice and bright. It's going to be good, I think. When I compare it to the piece of glass that I already have, it is slightly more yellow, so that's nice. So I have a brighter yellow that I can use. Really good. Cuts, I try to avoid boxing myself into a corner. When I do something like this, I have to find the exact shape, and so for my pile, my inventory pile, I can't even see anything that's close to that, so I'm gonna have to cut that, which slows me down quite a bit. So it'd been much faster if I just put something there and then worked my way out instead of making a shape that I have to cut specifically. Just recently purchased these 2 cutout shapes. One is a sunflower from Hobby Lobby and the other is a butterfly from Joann Fabrics. And the first thing I'm going to do is remove these hanging ropes. I don't like this twine, and they're just stapled in, so I'm using a staple remover to try to get them out. And then I will be priming the front side that I'll be putting the glass on. Interesting and add some dimension to the center. So I cut a piece of GoBoard out, this ring, and I'm going to glue it onto the base with Power Grab. For this one, I looked at a picture of a Monarch butterfly online, and the wings were sort of the same shape, and so I just sketched out generally the shapes of the orange that goes on the wing and the little white dots on the edge. And I think I'm going to go over it with Sharpie so I can see it a little bit better. That's it. I just realized I have an extra section on this side that I don't have on that side, but I'm just going to leave it. It's going to be fun. I'm about halfway done with the petals on this one flower, and I've decided to go ahead and add just a few beads to the petals. And there's a couple reasons for that. One is to connect the center element with the petals so that they're not two separate things, but there's a connection and an interplay between them. And secondly, just to add a little bit of sparkle to these petals. So I'm just going to add a few, not too many. And I'm going to be using E6000, and that is because I'm just going to be putting a few here and there. I'm not sure exactly where yet, and so I don't really want to mix up the epoxy. And I also don't want a black background because some of these beads are translucent. And that's it. Overall view of how far I am. Not as far as I'd like to be. So I think I'm going to be working on these other two. This one really, I think I'm so happy with it. It looks so on fire and tortured and just twisted. I love it. I have been looking at the sky also, maybe playing with this piece. But I don't have enough of that to just use that. So I'll see what else I have, but I love the color and the contrast there between the yellow and orange and the blue. That's it. Turns out I couldn't stand it being messed up, so I got some Sharpie and tried fixing it, and then it was so confusing I had to get colored pencil to fill in the areas. Thank goodness this substrate will not show when I'm done because it is a hot mess. But at least I understand what I'm doing now. My reference photo. I think I'm going to do this one next because I put it in front and I've already done a petal here where it overlapped on top of that one. I did just the tip of it. So I'm going to go ahead and do this one, and you can see this one, it's tilted more that way and the sun is more on this part and the shadow is right there. But I may shift it just a little bit so that it's a little bit more consistent with this one where there's more shadow at the top. I don't know, but anyway, I think it has more of a lemony yellow than this one. This one had more orange in it, so this one might get a little bit more yellow, and that'll bring it forward more. The glass that I had cut, all of the different feather cuts from this one, sort of got all mixed up together, and I'm gonna need quite a few more, so I'm gonna sort this a little bit and cut some more, and then I'll be able to get started. Next sunflower, I'm changing the palette just a little bit. I'm going to use all these same colors, but I added a paler yellow that's more of a pale lemon yellow. I had to paint the back of that one too, so I have more of that if I need it. And I am also going to introduce some browns. I've got this beautiful warm orangey brown, and then I have this one that's not as dark. It's more an amber, and it's a little bit translucent. So I'm gonna nip up just a few of both of those, and then I'll be ready to go. Now, last time I kept sorting through the pieces on the plate, and then I was the one who actually ended up mixing the two. And I don't want these to mix, so I'm just going to build a little divider here out of masking tape. And that will hopefully keep the pieces more separated this time. Even if I do sort through them, they won't get as mixed. I have covered this upper flower that's complete with tissue paper just to keep shards from going into the little cracks. They can sometimes get caught in there and you don't find out until you go to grout and you cut yourself. So I'll just cover it, and I have it loose so that I can refer to it if I need to. And then I cut the pieces rather large to start because you can put some bigger pieces in to begin with, but I may cut these down to smaller pieces as needed. Go ahead and add a couple beads now because I do have this gold one I want to use in with the darker parts before I All right, well, this is how far I got this week. I finished 1.5 of the sunflowers. They are quite large and they take a bit of time because they're so detailed. it's pretty good progress, but probably not quite what I was hoping for. So I'm going to miss a deadline that I was hoping to hit with it. So now, since I'm not going to hit that internal deadline, I'll just be able to relax and make it without trying to stay up all night getting it done. And at the same time, I also got pretty far on this one. It's looking good. I'm going to go and with a brighter color on the end, and then I'm going to start with that same color here and move to an orange. So, and add all kinds of business in the middle there. That's it. That's putting it together. Thanks for watching. See you next time.